if you know what that is, you might be interested in this video. This is the touch panel for HWH computerized air leveling system. This particular one is in a Monaco Dynasty motorhome, 2004 model coach. I've owned this motorhome for just a short time, so I'm kind of new to the big motorhome. So when I bought the motorhome, the air leveling system didn't really work well. The air ride system didn't even work well, and I'm going to try to share with you the difficulty I had diagnosing the problem and then how I finally repaired the system myself. So if you're interested in that, if you'd like to save a few bucks by not taking yours to the dealership to have it repaired, you might be able to benefit from watching this video. So this particular coach has air ride suspension like most big diesel pushers do. It also has air leveling system, not hydraulic leveling system. So there's no jacks on this motorhome. I know that some of the motorhomes like this have hydraulic jacks, and they also have air leveling system. This one only has air leveling. So, and now that it works, it really works well, and I haven't had any issues with it since I repaired it, but it did take me a while to figure it out. So I'm going to share with you some of the things that I learned. One of the things I learned is where all the components are of the air leveling system. So the design of the system is that when you're traveling down the road, this panel has a light down here that says travel. And you probably already know this, but when you're traveling, the travel light needs to be on. That means that the air leveling system has kind of given over control to the coach itself, and so that the air suspension system works correctly when it's moving down the highway, because the air suspension system should be leveling the coach as you make turns and go over hills and valleys and through bumps and all that. And so it lets air in and out of the airbags. That's what it should do. And it should be in the travel mode in order to do that. Well, my coach didn't do that. It wouldn't go in the travel mode. It was always kind of in the leveling mode. And so the way mine is triggered to go into the travel mode is by releasing that air brake. So when you release the air brake, the travel light should go on my coach, and couldn't get it to do that. Boy, frustrating. This coach also has a tag axle. And the tag axle, there's a switch near this that enables you to raise the tag axle or lower the tag axle as long as you're in first gear going a relatively low speed, maybe 10 miles an hour or less in low gear. Then the tag axle, you can keep it up. So if you're maneuvering the coach, you can maneuver more easily with the tag axle up with no weight on it. So my tag axle button didn't work. Didn't even light up. The light on it wouldn't even light up. So I looked high and low for fuses blown, did connectors not connected, did all the normal things, and finally just gave up on the tag axle and decided I'll work on the air leveling system. So the first thing that I did was replace the touch panel. I located the touch panel. I think I got it from Northwest RV Supply. It's an online RV supply, and I purchased one of these from them. I think it was less than $200. It might have been $150 or $175, something like that. And I found an exact replacement, because you probably know, if you know anything about these at all, that these touch panels are a little bit different on each coach, depending on whether you have hydraulic jacks as well. That would make this panel different, or like mine, it's just air. And so I'm sure there's other differences as well. I think there's even coaches that have air, the slides that move in and out with air, and so there's a lot of different ones that look a little different and probably have different circuitry in them because of that. So I did find through Northwest RV Supply, they had one identical to this. I purchased it, I installed it, hoping for the best. Didn't work, but it was easy to replace and it was relatively inexpensive, so that's what I replaced first. So just going through the components, where the components are for the system. There's this, and then from here there's a ribbon cable on this particular one. It has a ribbon cable. I understand that some of them don't have ribbon cables, they're more of a round cable. This one had a ribbon cable, and the ribbon cable goes from here to the center of the motorhome underneath the floorboard where the control panel is. And on these earlier models, this is a 2000 model coach, on the earlier models it's like a galvanized box, galvanized looking metal box, and it mounts under the floorboard generally, at least it does on this coach, and it's right dead center, in the center of the underside of the floorboard. So took me a while to find that. I didn't even know where to go to look for it. And I looked through the manuals for the coach. It had the wiring diagram showing some of the components, but it didn't tell me where they were. So I was able to finally locate that just through trial and error, looking around. And it was relatively easy to get to. You can slide in that basement compartment, expose it by taking a wooden panel down, and then underneath there was this metal box. So I took the box off, and it said HWH leveling system or whatever right on the box. So I knew that it was a major component. Well, that really is the computer that does all the thinking. And next to that control panel was a module, smaller module with some connectors in it, some wiring connected to that. And if I'm not mistaken, that's the component that tells the coach whether it's level or not. That's what sends the signal to the computer. So they put those in close proximity to each other. So if you're looking for your module that tells the coach whether it's level or not, or if you're looking for the main control panel, they may be right close together, and they're probably going to be in the center of the coach underneath the floorboard. That's where it was on this coach. So from there, from the control panel, there's looms of wire, and those looms of wire, some of them go forward and some of them go to the rear, and they go to a I'm calling it a manifold. It's just a metal block with the air lines that come off of it that go to each one of the airbags. The rear one for all the rear bags, and there's one in the front over the front axle for all the front airbags. So this coach has 4, it's got a lot of airbags. It's got 10 airbags. So I think there's 4 airbags over the front axle, and so there's these air control solenoids probably for I don't know how many there are. You know, I didn't count them. When you're under there, it's kind of cramped and crowded and dark, and you're under there with flashlights. I didn't count them, but there's a lot of them, right? So there's solenoids for lowering, for letting air out of bags, and there's solenoids for letting air into the bags, for raising the coach. So you've got solenoids for raising the right side, and you got solenoids for lowering the right side, and you got the same thing for the left side in the front. So there's probably, I don't know, 4 or 8 of those solenoids in the front. There's a lot. And in the rear, there's even more, because this coach has a tag axle, but that was something that I really didn't know how all that interconnected. But there is a manifold back there with rows of these solenoids. Fortunately, each one of these solenoids has a tag on the wiring harness. I don't know if I know you can't see that. This particular one says left lower. And so what that should mean is that this is for the left side of the coach. It would either be for the right, for the rear or the front. It doesn't say on here, but this one would be the left, and it would be the one that would dump air out. So in some places the nomenclature is raise and lower, and sometimes it's dump for lowering air out. But anyway, that's what they do. They let air into the airbags, or they dump air out of the airbags, and there's a lot of those solenoids. So that's kind of where all the parts are. And so it's pretty simple, even though that manifold with all those air lines coming off of it and all the wires for each one of these solenoids, there's bundles of wires with all these connectors. It's kind of overwhelming at first. But you know, with a little troubleshooting, you can kind of figure out what the problem might be. So in my control panel, that control panel that's in the center of the motorhome with the galvanized metal cover on it, there's rows of fuses in there, circuit boards in there, right, with all these fuses, and you can see they're labeled on the cover. It says what each one of those fuses is for. Number 6 might be for the left rear lowering solenoid, right? And so it's a pretty good diagnostic tool right there. If you got a blown fuse for number 6, and number 6 says it's for left rear lowering, you go to the left rear of the motor coach and get underneath there, and you figure this is probably the bad solenoid if it says left lower on it, right? So that's what I did. So here's what I'll interject with a little warning, though. Not a little warning, a big warning about getting underneath a motorhome with air suspension. If you get underneath a motorhome with air suspension, you start bleeding air off of anything, you know what's going to happen, right? The coach is going to come down. And when the coach comes down, you could be trapped underneath there, or you could be crushed, or your arm trapped, or whatever, right? So it's a note of caution. Make sure you understand what you're doing and how this air suspension works, and where when it's all the air is bled out of the system where it sits down. I would suggest that before you get under a motorhome to work on the air suspension system, that you dump all the air out of the system. And that's probably the safest thing to do. Unfortunately, it may be that you wouldn't be able to get underneath your coach if it was bled all the way down. I don't know. You'll have to make sure. My coach has bigger diameter and bigger dimensional tires. It's got like 295, 80, 22 and a halves on it. So I think it gives it a little more road clearance. So mine, even with the suspension all the way down, I can just shimmy under there. So if you have, even if you have 22 and a half inch wheels, if you have like 275s on there, you may not be able to get under there with all the air bled out. So just a note of caution, don't get underneath a motorhome and start bleeding air out of a air suspension system for fear of being crushed or entrapped under there where you can't get out. So with that being said, you really, in order to repair this, you have to get to the solenoid valves, and if you determine you've got a fuse blown, you go to the corresponding valve, you remove that valve, and if you screw one of those out of there, if there's air in the system, it's going to bleed off. So make sure you understand that, and then replace it. So again, I bought these also at Northwest RV Supply. These, I think these were a little over, I think these were $109 for these solenoid valves. And I bought one, or actually bought two of them, and just so I'd have an extra. I thought I was going to have an extra, and I replaced this valve for the left rear lowering, because that's what my coach wouldn't do. I couldn't get the air to come out of the left rear airbag. No matter what I did, I pushed on these buttons all I wanted to let air out. Air wouldn't come out. So replaced this valve, or replaced this valve. This is the one I took out, right? The old nasty dirty one. And so I took that valve out, put a new one in like this, and lo and behold, it still didn't work. So needless to say, I was really disappointed that it didn't work. But I never give up, right? So I went back to I took a few days off. I was tired of crawling around under there in the dark and getting rust and grime in my eyes. So I took a few days off, came back, and went back under there and got my ohm meter out again, and I started checking ohms, the resistance on the windings in these things, right? You can unplug them and then check your ohm readings on these things, and if you read all the ohms, they should all be pretty similar. If they're all unplugged from the system, the windings all look exactly the same, so the ohm reading should be identical or close to it. And so I read all those, and I did find one that had an odd ohm reading. It wasn't directly shorted, but I don't remember what the numbers were, but it was different, and I thought, So I looked at the tag on here to see what it went to, and I don't know if this is it or not, and I can't. This tag says raise, so I think this was for the tag axle. And when I replaced this one, bang, the whole system started working. You know, it was a great day. It was a great day in my life, the day that the system started working. So not only did the travel light come on like it was supposed to when I pulled the emergency brake off, but I could push the level button and it would level the coach perfectly. And also my tag axle started working correctly. The button that's located up near this, which is just a rocker switch that it's got a light in it. As soon as I replaced this solenoid valve, the tag axle started working perfectly. So bang, it was a surprise. This was kind of like a bonus that the tag axle started working, and the left rear airbags would dump the air out. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. Be careful. That's really important. So we'll go outside. Bang. I'm 16 or 13, 12, 13 years old, however old that is. Hey, this is Joe again. If you like this video, if you think it'll be helpful for you, I plan to do some more of these videos about repairs on my motorhome. Maybe you can learn something along with me. If you like it below. If you like it below.